5 years ago, I decided that I wanted to engage in better, honest conversation. I, like many of you, I'm sure, can feel the pressure of social media as people give all the highlights of what's going on in their life with very little of the reality. And to be honest, I also feel guilty at times as I contribute to this filtered digital world. So I came off all platforms for around 3 months and decided to start a podcast. A podcast with the aim of delving into the authentic, unfiltered realm that is real life. Although season 1 was cut short by lockdown, I did manage to produce 7 episodes. And to be honest, they actually got a really positive reaction. In 2023, I decided to quit my 9 to 5 and pursue season 2, this time in audio-visual format. But this video isn't about me telling you how I'm now a master at podcasting, because I'm certainly not. In fact, it's the opposite. Upon analysing all of my episodes so far, I have laughed, cringed, felt a sense of pride as well as frustration. But fundamentally, I have spotted gaps. Learning and skill gaps that I want to improve on, either using my podcast as a medium to do so or as a motivation to do so. So with that, here are 3 skills that I want to improve on. Number 1, articulation. I'm sure many of us have been in a situation before where we're trying to convey a certain point or emotion or a thought, but we have difficulty finding the words to do so. Well, I know I certainly have anyway. I know I can be an absolute chatterbox at times, but I'm on about finding the right words. And what do I do when I can't find the right words? I add filler words. Yeah, do you know, these are all examples of those filler words. This is my brain's way of saying currently processing, but often failing to find that exact word, term, phrase, etc. that I really need in order to convey myself clearly. It is common and normal, I know. And to be fair, I actually have seen quite a lot of improvement over the years. But for me, as a podcast host, I feel like I have this sense of duty to become a bit more articulate. So it's just become a real kind of goal of mine, essentially. Whilst I do feel that I'm miles off the word wizards, that is Jordan Peterson, Stephen Fry, people like this, I do feel like having my podcast is giving me a great sense of motivation to want to learn and get to a point that I feel that I'm really, really happy with.
It's a great thing to be articulate. You can negotiate with your clients. You can introduce your coworkers. You can make a case for your employees. You can advertise your services. You can think through your problems. You're firing on all cylinders.
So, how do I plan on improving my articulation? Well, a few ways. Firstly, I'm using books. I do have to admit that I have kind of phases when it comes to reading, because reading is a skill. So sometimes I'm just smashing through the books and other times I go months on end without basically touching one. But here's the detail. Well-written books that push me slightly out of my comfort zone, but not enough to overwhelm me. I don't really want to read a book that feels like I'm reading a completely different language, but I do want a book that's going to help me learn. And how am I going to learn if I know everything already? I also use Audible, but it can be trickier if you don't know the spelling of the word. But nonetheless, exposure to these new words and terms and phrases, etc. is all great. Which brings me to my second method, surrounding myself with people I can learn from. This can be in person, like at events, or maybe something a bit more casual. It can also mean podcasts, online events, etc. You may have heard the term, you are a product of your environment, or there's now an updated one, which is you are now the product of your top 5 podcasts. And to be honest, I do think this holds some truth. So if I want to improve on my articulation, I have to put myself in environments or create those environments for me to be stimulated and learn. I must add, this doesn't mean that I'm going to suddenly drop friends or family members who I don't think are word wizards, because I learn lots of different things from different people. It simply means that I'm going to create that environment or expose myself to those people that I can learn from, especially when it comes to a certain skill. My third approach is analysis. The beauty and curse of editing your own podcast is you pretty much see everything. The curse is that I do find it difficult at times to watch myself, especially if I'm in one of those moods where I'm just being overly critical of myself. But the beauty is that if you do have a growth mindset, which I like to think I do, it means I can learn from those gaps and what I kind of see as flaws essentially and just turn them into a learning curve. I'm going to be honest here, I think it's going to take me quite a while to get to the level of articulation that I do want, but I'm okay with that. The second set of skills that I'm working on is tech skills. This goes from videography, editing, to kind of learning about more advanced technology such as AI and how I can use that in things like marketing and different departments wherever applicable. I do actually plan on delegating a lot of these kind of tasks to pros, but there are reasons that I haven't done so from the very beginning. Number one, it may be obvious to some, but it's financial constraints. I mentioned earlier that I quit my 9 to 5 to pursue this podcast season 2, so therefore funds were a bit more limited. So I had more time than financial resources to inject into this podcast. I actually put together the podcast pretty much single-handedly. And although it's a ton of work, and if you've ever had exposure to being a part of a podcast or doing one yourself, you'll know it is a lot more work than you think at the start, but I don't regret that. The next reason though is more of a fundamental one for me. In order to run a business long term or any sort of brand, details matter, and I'm talking about small details as well. But for me to understand those details, I need to have enough exposure to the different components that are put together to form a project. In this case, my YouTube channel, podcast. It can make a huge difference down the line if I'm familiar with terms and phrases and in general how things work when it comes to different departments. So this could be editing, filming, marketing, whatever it is. And I'd rather learn that now than having to really get invested down the line when things get a lot more busier and bigger. So for me, my strategy is to learn the basics of all areas now and then delegate accordingly the work that doesn't fall under my area of expertise. And thirdly, a skill that's not only crucial for interviewing guests, but one that I personally think is quite rare in day-to-day life: active listening. Active listening doesn't just mean not talking over a person or interrupting them when they're speaking. It means paying careful attention to the words they're using, really slowing down and trying to understand where they're coming from, the story or point of view they're giving, and refraining from that instant feedback that we might have that urge to give, both verbally or cerebrally in our own thoughts. If I'm in a more hyperactive state, I find this particularly difficult. And it's not that I don't respect the person's point or I don't want to hear their point. I just sometimes get excited when they're talking about something particular because maybe I feel I can relate to it or I've got a similar story or something like that. Other times I'm not physically interrupting them, but I'm off in my own world thinking of that story that I want to share in just a moment. So this is what I mean. My goal here is to refrain from that and really pay that attention to the person and what they're saying. Active listening does not mean you have to agree with everything the person is saying, nor does it mean you can't challenge them after. But what it does mean is that you are giving them space for them to convey their point and for you to actually really feel that you can understand what they're saying without going off into your own thoughts, like I mentioned a minute ago. Luckily, active listening is a skill, and it's one near the top of my list, if not the very top. My podcasting journey so far has definitely been the best way for me to improve this because I'm frequently interviewing different guests. They speak in different ways, they use different terms, and the beauty of this is it essentially forces me to listen. Because if you think about it, if I don't listen to what they're saying, or if I say interrupt them all the time, it doesn't sound very nice when you're listening back, but it also means that I can't ask them appropriate questions to keep that conversation flowing nicely. I've seen quite a few improvements in myself in terms of my podcasting journey, but I think I tend to fall down a lot in my day-to-day life, so this is a specific area I really want to improve on. So it's not just as simple as less talking, more listening. It's more specific, attentive, focused listening to the words, the phrases, and essentially making sure that I'm understanding the perspective of the person talking, regardless of views, biases, and if applicable, agenda, which is particularly scarce in the media, I think. So if you want to see more or less of something, start with yourself is the way I'm going with it. So that's my current 3 skill priorities. I'm not sure what they'll be with the future, but who knows, we'll find out. Feel free to comment below the skills that you might be working on or perhaps you feel like you need to learn and how you plan on doing so. Other than that, see you in the next episode.